game or something.
Thank you.
Alright, excuse me everybody, we're going to get started here if you don't mind.
We're networking.
Network out. You never stop networking. You can see YouTube texting in the back while he's doing his thing. You guys can get everybody's attention real quick. We're going to get started here. Thank you for coming this morning. I know it's the end of August and you want to be on vacation and it's 1,000 degrees outside, so thank you for making the effort this morning. If this is your first Entrepreneurship Council meeting, welcome. We hold them monthly here at the Chamber. They're members only. It's a group of like-minded business owners and potential business owners that want to learn a little bit more. It's conversational. It is about topics that you guys vote on, but it's not just a straightforward PowerPoint presentation. It's so you can get the information you need, ask questions, get involved, and you know what? You might just find that somebody in the audience has the answer to your questions as well. There will be some networking afterwards, so apologies for interrupting, but you'll get to have a few minutes at the end. With that said, I would like to introduce Lance Evans. He's going to speak about branding today. So like I said, ask him some questions. We'll go through the presentation. Don't be afraid, don't hold back, and I'll see you at the end.
Actually, be afraid. Hold back. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming. Thanks for coming on a hot August day. Thanks for inviting me on a hot August day. So what we're going to try to do is cover the concept of branding just as an overview. I've got a deck of about 21 slides, and I'm going to try to do each one in about a minute or so, roughly on average, to try to get through them all. But understand that each and every one of these is stuff that we could go on for half an hour about. So we're doing it over. To start you off, the short version, for those of you that need to get to work soon, ADD, jump to the back of the book, read the end before you get to the whole thing, right? All of that stuff. All right? Let's start off with this. The short version is, branding is everything about your company. So no matter what it is that you do, no matter how you interact with customers or even vendors and everybody else, branding, I'll stand back here. Slide over there, walking behind me. It's just everything, and I'm going to beat this to a dead horse. It's everything about your company. I'm going to do it for the math geeks out there. I came up with this totally non-scientific algorithm about how math, a squared plus b squared plus c equals everything. Everything is your brand. Nothing that you do with your company, with your product line, with your online, with your offline, with your advertising, is excluded. And finally, again, to just beat a dead horse, okay? Everything is brand. I mean, I love this so much. You can see I registered it, I copyrighted it, I trademarked it, and patent is pending, so, and licensing is available. And that's it. For those of you that need to get to work, we've covered it. Okay, that's the short version. But if you want to learn a little bit more, let me just digress for a second. Tell you just a little bit about who I am, Lance Evans, why the heck you should be listening to me or not. Staffer for years at some of the top agencies, marketing firms, J. Walter Thompson, Jerry Delafamino. If you know Jerry, he was a guy who the Mad Men series was based on, his books. Worked with him in all three of his shops. Bates Worldwide, was there for years. Foot Cone Belding, FCB. Got to work one-on-one with some of the top guys in advertising, and I learned just a tremendous amount. And I've been writing about the subjects, creative, marketing, branding, all of this stuff for many years. About 25 years ago, I co-founded Graphlink Media, and for years we've done very big brand stuff. In the last number of years, we've always done SMB stuff, and in the last few years we've really swung towards working more and more with SMB, small, medium-sized businesses. And the challenge has been taking what we know from doing the big brands to trickling it down to what is appropriate, what is within budget, and how to make those budgets work better for even a small brand, even mom and pop shops, and certainly for medium sized, let's say 50 to 100 person companies, things like that. Welcome. Thank you. Okay, so nobody left? Still got a... No. Okay, let's jump into it. Quick recap, in case you forgot. Branding's everything, but let's clarify. It's from A to Z, it's from soup to nuts. It's everything your company does, says, creates, everything feeds into your brand, and in turn, what the public thinks about your brand. And that's ultimately where branding always goes. It's in the consumer's mind. I want to just also clarify one thing that people get very confused: branding, and we'll get into some other variations in a few moments. But think of it this way: a brand is the adjective, or perhaps sometimes a noun, of your company. It is what people think of your company. Whereas branding is what we do. It's the action of trying to create the brand in the consumer's mind. Okay, so when you hear branding and brand, they are two different things, even though they're used interchangeably, and it gets very confusing. The word brand, if we're of a certain age and remember the old westerns, right? So it's very easy for us to think of brand as being related to branding a cow and putting your mark on that. But just keep in mind, and as important as that all is for branding and iconography and all of that, and it is important, but remember, always keep in mind that that icon is just that. It represents other things. I can get geeky very easily, so always feel free to rein me in. But words on a page. If you see the word cows, COW, obviously that is not a cow. It's what we have determined and agreed upon as an icon, a visual representation, a communication of an animal that we call cow. Okay, a logo is much the same thing, especially if you do it properly. A logo is an icon of everything that your company wants to be, hopes at least people think it is. Okay, so in that sense, you hear debates back and forth about your branding and your logo, and a logo is important. A logo becomes more important as the company becomes bigger, because for the simple reason that the larger your budget, the more you get to have the message out there. The more the message is out there in various ways, advertising, branding, marketing, the more people start to associate that logo, that icon, with all the things that come with it. Quick example, you see an Apple with a thing, you see the iconic Apple from Apple Computer. Well, you instantly, we all do, have a whole rush, even if it's subtle. There's a rush of connotation of whatever that might be. You see IBM, you have connotations, and so there's a lot that is attached to it, but it doesn't build itself. In other words, the logo itself isn't an island. It doesn't stand by itself. It ties into and represents everything else that your brand represents. Okay, I didn't mean to scare anybody. Anybody?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kevin Talbot, and I'm from Crown Media Group. And so I noticed just now, and I wanted to say that I love the fact that you differentiated brand versus branding. Like one is the adjective and one is the actual verb.
Just because people get confused.
Right.
So
just now I noticed when you spoke about it, you also said advertising, marketing. You kind of broke those down. Could you elaborate a little more on what's actually the difference?
I'm sorry, what was your name? Kevin?
Kevin.
Good question. That'll be slide 18. Something like that. Yeah, I do as much as I can break anything down in this format. But yes, they all overlap in a Venn diagram kind of way. Moving back to that, anything else? Icons, logos.
How much of what you do, Kevin, is Evan? It's
Lance.
just like I said. It's
Lance Evans.
Evans.
Yes.
Just
You can call me by my last sir if you want.
just call you.
I had a friend back in junior high that used to be called sir.
How about late for dinner?
Yeah, never.
No.
Or early on
How
Sunday.
much of what you do is informed by consumers or your target, or what people have to say about these brands?
Ideally, everything's a feedback loop. Because if you study this stuff for years and you do it for years and you pull all of the greatest information and minds together into a group and you come up with a determination on the best way to do it, you'll still be off by this much. We never know. It's like a science project. It's like we always get it wrong. And we try not to beat ourselves up about that. Because you get feedback from people, and that's why you do things like focus groups. Which in itself is the old science thing about if you're observing something, you affect that thing. So it's not exactly, but as humans, it's as close as we can get. So focus groups are about as close as we can get until we bring things to market. And there have been plenty of times when all of us, no matter how famous and successful we are at this stuff, you have your best guess, you bring it to a focus group, and you go like, how could we have been so far off? Or every once in a while it's the opposite. It's like, hey, we did good, guys. Next round's on me. So yeah, it's a feedback loop. You're always trying to get more information. The downside to that is that today, and it's not really a downside, it's just on a personal level, I'll just say, so a little humanizing, is that as we've gone into the digital age, so much of the human end of this business has been usurped by the numbers, the clicks. So you find that, especially in a lot of agencies, we're a digital agency, we do, the humanity to some degree. It's like we used to complain about group decisions, committee decisions. Some of the humanity gets taken out and gets changed over to what is banal and more broadly and the click-throughs are the same kind of thing. When we start doing online advertising, if we base everything on the clicks, we run the risk of missing the mark, because sheer numbers aren't necessarily all we're ever after. There are other elements to it. Did that kind of answer?
A follow-up question, Counselor? Sure. Are you going to talk at all, you don't have to because it's about branding, but are you going to talk about branding in this click-through digital age today, since you're more of a seasoned person bringing that perspective? Or should I follow up with you myself?
Yeah, follow up after.
Okay.
I'm not going
I don't wanna
to
interrupt your flow.
I'm just,
Thanks.
So far I can go.
Thanks.
I'm probably already running along here. Just to take it a step further and give some level of example. First off, I want to say that in addition to branding is everything, I also want to say that, let's say chiseled in stone number 2 is branding always exists. Whether you have a lemonade stand or a major corporation, each and every one of these businesses all have brand. It may be a good brand, it may be a bad brand, it may be the brand you want to send out to the world. It may be, I may say this a few times, it may be more Exxon after the Valdez. But whatever it is, it's out there. And just playing off of the logo and iconography we were just talking about, take a look at these 3 treatments for Acme. Okay? And I'll just, again, time, I would open this up. I'm sure all of you have great things to input. I'd love to hear it. I wish we had time. But I'll just give you my quick overview. This first one, to me, looks like it's from 1962. And again, if you're a certain age, you look at this and you might think Man from U.N.C.L.E., which is also, okay, he's nodding his head. Yeah, remember the Man from U.N.C.L.E.? It opened up with that. I mean, it looks very early 60s. It looks like a company that really hasn't been seeing a whole lot of love in terms of its brand image, which in turn probably at least makes me think, okay, are they still running on old IBMs and, from the 80s? Are they going to mess up my accounting? Are they getting the product? Is the product as evolved as it should? Whatever. All these things are coming at me just from this. Okay? Second one, Acme. It's clean, it's modern, there is nothing wrong with it. It's not going to stick in my mind though. It's very generic. So when you go to some graphic designer or you're getting a website or whatever it is you're getting done, and this is a typical thing where somebody says, oh, gee, I don't really want to spend, pick a number, $1,500, $2,000, $500 on a logo. You'll end up with this, okay? They'll just knock something out for you. And you know what, it's fine. Just remember that the couple of $1,000 that you didn't spend on a logo may cost you many times over in trying to be remembered later on, because that's very forgettable. It's very clean. The imagery in my mind is fine. It says nice things about the company, but not memorable. The last one over obviously had a lot of love, a lot of thought. Now, I may not want all of that as part of a logo, but you know that this is, even though it's retro, it's old looking, it's, I don't know if that's Old West or metal type kind of looking from the 1900 something. We clearly know that that's retro compared to this being old, all right? Clear difference between the two, even though that one presumably looks older. It's also very memorable. That's going to stick with you. You see that 2, 3, 4 times, chances are you're going to start remembering that pretty quickly. And in terms of branding, okay, that's in terms of brand awareness. In terms of other things it could bring to the branding is you just get a feel of a sense of humor from the company. You can read whatever you want into it, but that's sort of the point. There's stuff to read into it. You can attach positive things. Let me take this another direction. Expand it a little bit. Same idea. Your retail space. I don't know how many of you have retail businesses, but your retail space is, I want, if there weren't other people, I'd yell, huge. is tremendous. I have worked with too many retail businesses that just don't take advantage of this avenue space that they've got, which is costing them $15,000 a month, $25,000 a month, whatever it is. They are spending more on that than they will ever spend on their kids' education and clothing and everything else, and yet their storefronts look terrible. And in fact, I've had clients that I've talked with and pleaded with them. I said, people walk past you. I said, do me a favor, take 20 minutes. I'm going to show up, walk away from your company for 20 minutes. I showed up with this one company with 2 chairs, 2 folding chairs. Look, with 2 folding chairs. And I said, come outside. 2 layers, guys. Come outside to the corner. And I opened the folding chairs and we sat on the curb, at the curb, a little bit away from the store. And I said, I want you to look at people's reactions as they walk past your store. And after 10 minutes, it's like, I get it. So, the brands here, we know instantly. They're all Italian, right? Okay, we kept it in the same general ilk, but we know that they're different brands. We know that this is a fancy and expensive Italian restaurant. We know that, we're probably going to go there on our anniversary or birthday or graduate or something more special. This is the Italian restaurant that Billy Joel sings about. The one you go to on Friday evening with the house red wine and
Mama
just
Leone's, yeah.
yeah, right. Giuseppe and whole bit. And that's casual. It's casual Italian food. It's good. It's not as fancy. It's also not as expensive. It's a different brand. And then you've got your slice with the beer. Okay. Just from the way the place looks and what they sell, we've got brand. Okay, so we get into the part where I have more text and I have to read to remember what the heck I wanted to say. So bear with me. Branding, which is why I defined it earlier. Branding is that process of trying to take an active role in creating that brand image. Ostensibly, we always do this to create a positive brand image. And in that process, sometimes it doesn't always work out right. And we can think of things like, New Coke, which obviously was trying to improve things and backfired. So we need to be careful when we go forward in our branding and marketing and all new rollouts, because it doesn't always work out the way we want it to. But there are 4 main reasons why companies are involved in their branding. The first one is simply that you're a new company and you want to make your first impression on the world and your market. And that actually is one of the best times to do it, more than anything else, not just because you're new and you want to make that impression, because you also have the energy of a startup. No company has the kind of energy per manpower that a startup does. It is a great time to cross the T's, dot the I's, and get everything fresh, new, and out there the way you want it to. A lot of startups don't have the bandwidth to do everything they maybe want to in this area, but it's important. Number 2, we touched on this before, is just companies had a setback, whether it's New Coke, whether it's the Exxon Valdez, any of these things, where your brand has taken a really bad hit. That's a key place where rebranding, upping your public relations, all of these things become very important. Even to the point of advertising that sometimes will just say, hey, we just saw this recently with Facebook. Facebook, has been so tarnished in the last year that we saw their ads where they're saying, hey, basically, we apologize, we know we did wrong, we know we're going to do better, stay with us. Trying to stem the tide of people signing off. Third reason is if your company just doesn't have a positive brand. You've been around a long time. Maybe that first version of the Acme that we saw from 1962. If you're one of those companies that's just been staying in business but lagging in all these areas, and it's just one of these companies that you hardly notice. They perform a service, you occasionally need them, but it's not front and center, and not in a positive way. This is a good candidate for rebranding, all types of things. The last one is the kind that you mostly hear about most of the time, and you hear about in articles and books that talk about companies stellar companies you talk about, the Apples and the other big companies that are superstars, that want to grow beyond the intrinsic value and market. And that's kind of an important term, intrinsic value and market. I'm trying to think of an example. There are a lot of one that comes to mind for me is Starbucks. Now, everybody loves Starbucks. Starbucks is wonderful. I have a coffee machine at home. You know, I don't buy into all of that. And this coffee that I just got from up here is perfectly good. And I'm a bit of a coffee snob. I don't need Starbucks. But yet, somebody must. Because they're on every corner, right? We don't need Starbucks on every corner. But we have them on every corner. And there's a reason. The intrinsic value of Starbucks is far less than their market share. Okay, is everyone following me?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, remember about 20 years ago when the coffee boom started and we had World Coffee, Timothy's, a bunch of others, and then somehow Starbucks swallowed them up, put them out of business. How did they do it? Well, first off, I'll just as an aside, I think there was a pact with the devil, but that's aside from me. Right? I mean, I don't know how he did, you know, because really their coffee isn't any necessarily better. They have helpful people behind the counter. Their places don't look all that cool or great. So I question how that happened. So I've settled on pact with the devil. But aside from that,
We go to him for marketing.
it's they've done phenomenally, but they have gone way past their intrinsic value to the market. And if you want to do that, your brand has to be spectacular.
Do you feel that way about Netflix and Google?
Okay, well, Netflix is kind of a one-trick pony. I'm sorry, who's Wes?
I'm Aaron.
Oh,
sorry.
hi,
I never
Aaron.
introduced myself when I called you
Hi, Aaron.
Evan or late for dinner.
Aaron, please.
Aaron. Yeah. Do you feel that way about? I would assume you would put Netflix and Google in those categories, wouldn't you?
Not necessarily. Well, Netflix not packed with the devil. Google maybe. I don't know. Google is
Superstar brands.
Yeah. Well, Google's different in that they have actually created and done things years before anyone else came close. So it's very different than a company that sells you, that pours you coffee. You know, I mean, we've always had coffee. You know, so there's a real
They've created something.
real difference between the two things. Google was a one of a kind, and even though they're imitators and copiers of things, they're unique. Netflix, same thing. Netflix was the first one to do it, and still, even after all these years, and even with, and I'm a big fan of Amazon, Jeff Bezos, and I'm a subscriber to their Prime, and I try to watch the movies, but they're finally getting their interface to be sort of passable. But you know, their interface has been terrible, and he's one of the richest guy in America now, not the world, I don't think, but in America. The company's phenomenal, and they haven't gotten the basics together the way Netflix has for a number of years now. By the way, I just read that Netflix actually still has 3 million subscribers still getting discs, which I just thought, I read them 2 days ago. I just thought that was amazing. Still 3 million people, 3 million, we know they're somebody's parents, right?
Lance, I don't mean to dominate all the questions here. Do you make a distinction between branding and imagery? Since you have a poor brand image?
Good question. I have to think about that. Branding and imagery. Well, imagery is one of the tools of the brand.
It's a tactic?
Yeah,
That's a strategy?
Well, just as much as your product or your customer service, your visual image is part of your brand. It's also it's also the easiest part to communicate. I mean, it's very hard to communicate that we, after sale, we'll talk about this, after sale, we have great customer support. I mean, that's an important thing, but you know what, people and salespeople don't necessarily, in most areas, don't push that aftermarket stuff. And if there's any aftermarket, it's buy more insurance. You know, insure your toaster for, so in 3 years you've spent twice as much. The visual helps promote and puts a positive, attractive light on whatever it is we're talking about. We're trying to do.
Yeah, I was actually gonna add. So I think it's interesting when people like use the Starbucks analogy, and I think one thing that helped Starbucks outgrow just anybody else who sells coffee is really the experience. You know, because you can go get a dollar coffee at your local corner store, but I think what made Starbucks grow up was like the fact that people get to sit down, or I get to feel like I have this own space where I can work or do these other things. So I was actually going to ask that example for number 4, if you can use it with maybe like another brand, like let's say a sporting brand like Nike, where it's literally all they do is sell workout clothes, but everybody sells workout clothes. So what's the difference between, or what do you think is something that helped like a Nike blow up more than an Adidas or Puma, who are now maybe they're growing their brands, but no matter what, when you think about sports.
Yeah, Adidas, I mean, for years it was Adidas versus Nike, boom, 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 and Nike just blew it away. But yeah, I mean, most of it, not all of it necessarily. I mean, maybe, and this is out of my area of expertise, maybe Adidas, because I think Adidas started the high-end sneaker craze with the waffle.
That was
Was that Nike? Who did it?
that was Nike.
Who started?
They had the
Maybe they started because I remember.
they did the waffle thing.
Really? Because in my mind, Adidas
Bill
was
Bowery.
around before Nike.
Used to run.
but at any rate, yeah, I mean, Adidas stopped. They just stopped competing. I mean, that's the impression you get anyway. Nike just kept just do it. The whole outline, the silhouette, even before Apple had that. And, the whole.
adhered to a more European, Euro
Yeah.
strategy.
Yeah, definitely had more.
They had a more
flavor.
worldwide Euro strategy, whereas Nike was clearly, American.
Yeah. And I don't know, maybe Adidas is doing great the rest of the world.
It has a stronger global presence.
Right. I mean, what was that thing about? I forget the name of the show. What was that? The talking car years ago. The guy who was the star of it.
Knight Rider.
Was it Knight Rider?
That's
Yeah.
Michael Hudson.
Mike Hudson, right? Yeah. Apparently, he's international singing sensation, except for here. When you say that here, people look at you like you're crazy. All right.
Hey, Lance.
Yeah.
Real quickly, can you speak a little bit with the last slide about the experience issue? I know we have some solo entrepreneurs in the room where maybe the perfect name, the perfect logo doesn't necessarily apply when it's, Rob Fortier is the business or Jeff Goodman is the business, and about sort of,
Well, I have a logo.
give a logo. But, that so much of that brand is the person and the experience of dealing with them and how you maintain and grow that brand. It's kind of hard to change your personality sometimes.
Well, some of these people just have to. Well, actually, the next slide actually touches on that in a little bit.
My last question before you walk on this. So I noticed in the last slide you spoke about, and I always kind of look at like logos in 2 parts, especially logos that have like an image and a logo that has like a name. How important is it for the image or the logo to tell what you do in business, or does that not even matter?
And this is why you don't want to just get a free logo. Because it really does, it absolutely gets complex. If you've got a name, and you try to, especially a person's name, and you try to bring too much art into it, or try to, I don't know, if you're Joe's plumber and you've got this monkey wrench, pipe wrench or whatever, it quickly risks getting too cutesy. On the other hand, depending upon the business, screw it. If it communicates what you do and people remember you for it, you may not care about that as much. It can vary. And these are things where there isn't necessarily a right and wrong. It's more, let's try out a range of things. I would much rather a client, at least be able to see a few different ideas, half a dozen ideas. Let's narrow down. Let's figure out where, who's receiving this, who's getting it, where, are you a plumber or are you a lawyer, or are you a company making widgets? Depending upon all these different things, do you sell to the wholesaler? Do you sell direct? I mean, today, so many businesses. This is just a quick aside. I've had so many companies, that talk to me and say, hey, listen, here's our problem, Lance. It's not like the old days where we had a chain of sales chain and we'd sell to distributors and that would be it. Because, now, I don't know, pick a number, a third of our business is direct online sales. And so we're competing with our sales chain. And we don't want to do that, but we want, so it's how do you speak with this one product, this, widgets, that we're selling to consumers, because we all know you love widgets, right? And it's great to be able to buy it direct. How do you take this market that you can sell directly without cutting yourself off at the knees from distributors who are going to call up and say, I'm not getting reorders because you're selling my customers directly now. So, how do you do all this? And all of this ties into how to some degree, how you're branding it and the logo. Now, having said all of that, I'll pull from something I remember from, everyone know who David Ogilvy was?
Yeah.
Ogilvy and Mather, and David wrote some of the, 40-year-old books now, but still some of the best stuff to read on the subject. You just, have to modify some things. Big proponent of art and design, but he did say this. He said, but keep in mind, he's never seen a consumer walk down the street and say, oh, whatever that is, I want to buy it because they're using Bookman Bold. Never. And that is true, but it also needs to be, broadened to the sense where you still want something that's nice and clean and contemporary and attractive to people. Move on. All right. Speaking to something that you asked before about logo, brand, and I'm touching on it in the sense that the word brand is so overused, and even 10 years ago, we didn't see brand being used for everything. Today it's been usurped, it's been put in place of what we used to call the company's reputation is now the brand reputation. A company or market image is now your brand image. Product loyalty is now the brand loyalty. Corporate identity is the brand identity. It's all of these things. And to be honest, it's needlessly confusing. I think it was a lot better the way we used to have it. It explained what it is now. Using the term brand for so much just dilutes what the meaning of it might be. But it's all under this umbrella of brand today. And we also have things like, in addition to company brand or brand loyalty, we also have your personal brand, which has become a big thing. And so how you do things as a personal brand, and then I think there are probably books written on this subject now, where your logo is, your name, your personality, all of this stuff ties into part of it. Jeff, did that answer, did I cover your question?
Yeah.
Sort of?
Around it, yeah.
Around it, okay. Any questions on this? A few cameras, but... Yeah, sit over here.
Yeah, I might as well. But, so you spoke about personal brand, and I know we live in a day and age where, especially like social media and things digitally.
Yeah, definitely part of it. Definitely
It can be
builds
kind of. Is there any differentiation in? So let's say how I'm Crown Media Group, and you may look at my Instagram or whatever, and you see okay, obviously I'm posting my media content, and these are videos I've worked on or photos that I've taken.
Mm-hmm.
And I also have a personal Instagram where I kind of do some of the same things, does it matter how I operate my personal brand, and
It
what that
can.
affect?
Yeah, I'm just cut to the chase. Yeah, it
Yeah.
can, and that's really very similar to what I was talking about before, where the company is now selling directly online and selling here. We all now have so many different channels open to us today than we did not many years ago. It's confusing, and a lot of the stuff is still being either it's being worked out,
Right.
or we're just getting to the point where we're saying, you know what, welcome to the modern age. We just grin and bear it, just deal with it. Companies that just say to their distributors, they say, look, we would love to help you out in every way we can and all that, but at a certain point, hey, a third of our income's coming from direct online sales, so if you think we're giving that up, it's not going to happen. One place where we've seen this also, for myself as a happy cord cutter with cable companies, and you look for finding things online. For a number of years, you saw that ABC, CBS, NBC were putting just about everything they had online for free. And now, after was it 4 or 5 years of that, you see them pulling back. CBS is putting things onto their CBS, CBS their service, whatever I forget the name. Things I like to watch Sunday political shows, and George Stephanopoulos' show that used to be online got harder and harder to find online, and then it got to the point where they said, check your local listings. So, because again, they're trying to protect their distribution chain. So it's a balancing act.
Hey, Lance, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Yeah, I'm just curious, this gentleman here said he's with Crown Media. Going back to the personal branding, it's something some of you know, I firm believer in this. All I do is personal branding. Do you think it's a choice that we have to make? Because I know in my case, having started 4 companies, sold a company, owning 2 companies now, I'm comfortable with the fact at the end of the day it's going to be about Ramon Ray. That's it. My clients, my businesses, it's going to be my face, what I do. That's why I'm always online. So what are your thoughts on just deciding, because if you're a manufacturer distributing, like you mentioned, it's got to be about John and Daughters Incorporated. But for me, I'm a solo business owner. I know Deborah is, Light of Gold. It's about me. People are hiring me. I'm not trying to pretend I'm Acme Incorporated. So what are your thoughts on that? Because I would never, I decided, even though I have Smart Hustle Magazine, even though I have smallbiztechnology.com, I know at the end of the day my customers are hiring me. Ramon, can you give a keynote? Ramon, can you fly to this country? It's about working with Ramon.
It is and it isn't.
Okay.
On the level you're talking about, I totally agree with you. It's you. Okay? But nobody's hiring you because you're you. Except your mom, right?
No, I didn't. Well, go ahead. I'll hear you.
Well, what I mean is, they're hiring you because of what you intrinsically are bringing to their business.
Yes, of course, yes.
Okay? So yes, if you make widgets, it's easier to divest yourself from the product. And
I guess that's what
you are your
Crown
product.
Media. I think of, regardless of who this gentleman is, regardless of who's the CEO, if he wants to go that way, we want Crown Media, like Starbucks. On the other hand, I made a decision,
Right.
it could
But
be called
just putting your name up there in lights is not going to bring people there unless they happen to know what you do.
Correct.
Right? So it's your personal brand, absolutely, for those who know what you do.
That is correct.
Right.
Which is what I do.
So that's a distinction that
Okay.
you need to address, because you don't want to just live with the people who already know you. You want to get the new ones.
Okay, we'll talk about it, Rolando.
Because I also think like the downside of it too, like especially what I do in media, there's a trillion media companies. But why I ask about the personal brand thing is because what is going to separate my company from other companies? And I found this far from talking to my clients, it's overall it is the experience. It isn't me. I understand what you're saying. It's the experience, but that's an experience that me and my team offer. And that's a part of our brand. Like they know that when they work with Crown Media. But you just
stack the deck.
Right,
They
so
know
that's
that
the
when
question.
they work with you, well, you're preaching to the choir. Okay? We're talking about people who aren't already working with you, right? Most of the time. Brand extends to people that are working with you, and certainly GM wants to get people back. GM wants to build their brand, and they want to get people back and back and back forever. So do a lot of food companies. Get them Kellogg's brand, get them young, and eating over. So all that absolutely true. But we do skew things to the new customer because all businesses just need, to varying degrees, some flow of new.
So I was wondering, for solopreneurs, do you have a general recommendation?
Sorry, say again?
For solopreneurs, do you have a general recommendation about using your name as the name of your company versus some other kind of name?
Just from obviously I used Graphlink. I used, as I introduced myself earlier on,
Right.
my company's Graphlink Media.
Yeah.
Okay, so obviously I have a preference for being a company and representing, not just representing yourself as a company, but also with the idea that unless you're stuck on the idea of only working by yourself at your desk and never having any associates or other people working with you, it is going to be more than just you. Now, there's certainly huge companies with the person's name, and there can be 10,000 people, I mean, even Walmart, if you want to go there, it's more iconographic at this point. But, you can work with your name and still be a big company. It depends on the field, it depends what you're trying to get across. So, somebody was asking about this, I think Kevin, yes, you were asking about this earlier. Just to get a sense of where all this branding versus marketing versus advertising all fits in. And it's all this Venn diagram where they all overlap. Marketing is just, this could be redone a bunch of different ways, but I just did it for simplicity this way. But generally, marketing has become the term that is the word. We don't hear advertising quite as much as we used to. Advertising, maybe in people's minds it was considered to be a little bit too much like sales, a little huckster. Maybe Mad Men didn't do it any favors. So we tend to hear marketing over the last decade more than advertising, and advertising is certainly a subset of marketing because marketing involves your advertising. Could include your PR, could include your just all of the different types of things you do to market your product or your company or yourself. Advertising being just paid advertising being just one part of that. Branding, you could argue, is on top of all of that because branding, again, if I didn't make this point clear earlier on, when somebody asked me. Branding is everything. Everything you do and say and breathe. Any questions on? This was a simple one, but any questions? Okay. But there is overlap because different departments. You'll also in companies or advertising agencies or whatever it is. You'll have one marketing department, you'll have the advertising department, you'll have the brand, and then there'll be the stuff that's like, well, gee, who do I send this to? This project. So there's overlap. Yeah, we're narrowing down, folks. What I call branding Buddhism, because both Buddhism, at least part of it, and branding are about perception. Buddhism, in part, teaches that we get to choose how we perceive things, and things aren't absolute. And branding is very much the same thing. Branding, we work to get a certain perception to the customer, potential customer. Example, if we give the same information to different people, some people will love our product, others will hate it. And many probably won't even pay much attention. There isn't a single brand image because your brand image is who's ringtone? Your brand image is going to be different in this man's mind and this lady's mind. You don't have control over that. You can try to influence it. But ultimately, the brand image is decided by the person, the recipient. of this. Okay. There's also no such thing as a constant brand image. Again, I use the Exxon example. 1 minute we love them, next minute we hate them. I could use, no one wants me getting a little political, Rudy Giuliani, if you remember, on September 10th, we New Yorkers weren't so crazy about him. But afterwards, he was America's mate. Okay? Things.
And look at him now.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect. Exactly. You know, it's things can swing. What's scary is that things can swing on a dime. You know, I mean, if there's that gradual fade off, we can live with that, or it's like the old frog in the hot water thing. We may not realize it until it's too late, but at least we have the option. But sometimes things, you know, just happen very quickly. So be aware that your brand image can change. What if you have a retail space? Let's bring it down to earth a little bit. Bring it down and say you have a retail store and you're on Fifth Avenue. And you've been there for 10 years, your lease is up, the landlord wants to triple your rent, you can't afford it, you move over to 3rd Avenue or 8th Avenue, okay? Immediately, your brand image is going to change. Not necessarily a bad thing. You may find you're doing better on 3rd or 8th Avenue. But you're going to have a different image than you do on 5th or Madison. The takeaway is just that brand image, your branding is not chiseled in stone, and it changes. So you have to keep aware of it and take care of it. You know, the example that I like to use, and this applies to all advertising and branding and everything, the best example that I come up with is, this is my son, by the way, and at some point a few years back, he comes to me and says, Daddy, instead of brushing my teeth every day, would it be okay if on, let's say, Sunday, I brush my teeth for a half an hour instead of 5 minutes a day? And logically, it makes sense, except it doesn't work. There are things that we just need to do every day. I mean, you don't want to fast all week and then binge on weekends, right? I mean, there are things that just need to be done on a regular basis, and like it or not, our branding and advertising and all of that stuff is part of that.
And sitting here quietly listening.
You have been. It's your turn now.
Yes, I'm Deborah with Life Goal PR Marketing, and we also have a book called Staying True to Brand You. And one of the things I did, I don't have any with me.
Well, you
it's
can
coming out. It's coming out in a couple months. But what I was going to say is that I think what every brand needs to keep in mind, every company, whether you're a solopreneur or a medium-sized company or a large company, is kind of doing a branding assessment to see where you are with your brand, because so many things change from year to year, and then you find out, okay, I don't know if I want to be associated with this anymore, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. We all change, you know, so if you kind of do an assessment of where you are, I mean, that's something that I do in my company consistently, just to make sure that, you know, we're staying on track with where we are with our brand. And I think when you mention things, companies like Exxon, even Facebook, you're kind of talking a little bit more about reputation management, which is something that, you know, from a PR standpoint, we run into a lot. Like with the spills,
It overlaps.
then it overlaps.
It overlaps. Yeah, all the stuff
Reputation management, brand reputation is one thing, and then managing that reputation, like from a crisis management standpoint, and issuing a statement, that's like, you know, something else.
I mean, like with the
So they do overlap.
Facebook, with any of these catastrophes, trust me, the word goes out to every department in every ad agency, PR firm that they're associated with. You know,
Right.
it's a mass in every direction trying
But
to
the
save the ship.
terminology has
Yeah.
changed a little bit too.
Sure. Thank you. Branding as promissory. No. Ultimately, when somebody looks at your logo, let's say, or thinks of your company, and you have a good brand, what you're really selling, what your branding is really doing is giving them a promise. You're promising them that here's a good company, we've been around a long time. We're gonna back it up. In that sense, it's a pre-sale thing, okay? Because you're using your brand, your good brand, to help make a sale, to help convert. Okay, so it's a sales tool in that sense. But there are two parts to branding. There's the using it as a pre-sale tool, and aftermarket. The aftermarket, after sale. Most of the time, we're dealing with the pre-sale because that tends to be harder to do, and it's the first hurdle in any exchange, in any relationship with a new customer. Is the first sale, and then following it up. The branding promises. Generally speaking, and this can be expanded in all sorts of ways, but generally there are a couple of promises your brand wants to make, you want to make to your customer. The reputable company. As I said, sell the company is reputable with a history of standing behind its products and its customers. And testimonials, awards, things like that tend to be used a lot. Those are the classic things. The second thing is, and this applies to really all advertising, our brand solves your problem. And I actually had a discussion with somebody not too long ago, and I said, advertising is about problem solving. And I said, show me an ad or a product or an ad that doesn't try to solve a problem. And I'll put it out to anybody if you can come up with something. Everything is about solving people's problems. I mean, you're a great group, and maybe you're going to stump me and make me good. Okay, but it's going to be the minority of cases. Most situations are about problem solving, and your advertising says, "Hey, you've got dandruff. We solve that." Our Seltzem Group or whatever, Head & Shoulders, our Head & Shoulders brand has been doing this for 50 years. So it's all about the promises. And as it says in the bottom, if you do both of these things, while it's not the complete solution, those are pretty core issues in converting somebody to your market. For those of you that care, this is the last slide. We'll open up after that, but I just wanted to rattle down a few things. When you're creating or recreating a brand, you start off with something. Let's say you have a company that's a fixer-upper that needs to be cleaned up. A brand is about everything your company does, creates. Creating a brand or modifying an existing one involves adjusting all of the aspects of a company to conform to the image you wish the market to see. So it's the old adage, be what they're looking for. Not necessarily the easiest thing in the world, but if you want to succeed, you do have to accommodate. In fact, I'll give you another David Ogilvy story. He worked in a high-end restaurant. I think it was a high-end French restaurant. I think it was in London, if I remember correctly. And whatever the customers came in and wanted, it was a high-end place, very expensive, and if they wanted something that they had run out of. One time, the chef he worked for had him run all over London to get the ingredients needed in order to make, because you do not say no. Good customer, you make them happy. And that, to a large extent, that used to be the attitude of most businesses at one point in time. And today, so deliver on what you promise. Become the product and the service that your customers are looking for, and you're going to do well. In trying to rebuild and rebrand. Generally speaking, building a positive brand image is a lot like getting a house ready for sale. You know, you go around, you try to, this room looks a little shabby, those stairs are a little rickety looking, and you start cleaning things up. Have any of you sold a house? You know, you went through all this, and then by the time you're done cleaning it up for other people, you look at it and say, gee, why did I do this for myself? You know, maybe I don't want to sell it. It's starting to look really nice. But in going through this process, you need fresh eyes, because we all get used to living in, you know, something less than top tier. We all get comfortable and a little bit less than whatever that might be in your business. So maybe, you know, in the house it's painting a room or stairs, and in business it's something else. And then in for a company, you may need better marketing material, a better logo, more attractive storefront. It might mean better advertising, or with a more appealing and updated message. Your message is important, because your message obviously drives all this other stuff. You know, it's a beautiful logo and great photography and all these things which we do create all the time, and I can be very happy creating beautiful stuff for you, but if message, if it's not backing up and building on your message, which ultimately is to make a sale, to make a new customer, then it's not focused in the right direction. Part of that is, does everyone know what a USP is? One person. One person?
We all do.
Oh, well, good. Well, quickly for those who don't, USP is unique selling proposition. And what that means, Russell Reeves came up with it at Bates Advertising many years ago. And basically, it's defining what makes your company different than others. And again, and obviously one of my favorite, David Ogilvy, talked about getting the Rolls-Royce account many years ago. And what he ended up focusing on was the fact that when you get inside a Rolls-Royce, it's soundproof. And you cannot hear the outside. You're isolated, you're protected, you're all these things that go with it. Whatever it might be. Obviously, a Rolls-Royce is still a car. So what makes it better? What makes your product better? Identify it and exploit it. What you probably don't want to do is the false USPs. My favorite one to hate is when you go into the grocery store and you go down the peanut butter and jelly aisle, and you see all the jellies, and you see the preserves, and you'll see a number of them. I haven't checked in a few years, but it was prevalent a few years ago. I'm sure it still is. You'll see on jars of preserve, it says, no preservatives. I'm like, why would, I mean, the whole point for anybody who, you know, preserves are designed to be lasting. You don't need preservatives. So the idea that that's their unique selling point is, to me, was absurd. But, you know, some people will think, oh, okay, you know, tie into the fact that a preserve is, so, yeah. And the other thing is that you'll find a lot of companies, and this ties back to the last slide of promises, you'll find a lot of companies will create a problem for you that they can solve.
Pharmaceutical.
Bingo.
That's where mouthwash came from, right? Listerine, isn't that halitosis?
Listerine. I actually
wash babies in bathtubs. I used to work on this.
Then it became mouthwash.
Yeah.
and there's a whole litany of these things. So, you know, so maybe there's a marginal problem, but it's certainly not, you know, a big market thing. So, yeah, I mean, this falls into the last one, which is, you know, sort of fake appearances, and you want your brand ideally to grow out of the truth also, and if you're putting all this work in it, at some point, especially with all the online stuff today and the Yelp and the reviews and all that, you know, you can't. I just had a problem with a dry cleaner, and I hardly ever post Yelp reviews, but I did. I posted a scathing one. Who was billing credit card for things, you know, hundreds of dollars and other ones, you know. So I wrote a scathing thing. But it all comes out today. It's very hard for it not to come out today. So the idea of being fake, well, you know, you can do it for a while, but today it catches up with you. So again, like so many other things, there are shortcuts, but there are fewer shortcuts today. Just doing it right, building a good business, promoting it properly and honestly is probably, I'm all for spin, but still being honest, is probably the best way to go about it today. Because unless you're looking to just build something quick and sell and get out. But if you're looking to build a business, and heaven forbid, you know, do people still pass businesses down to kids anymore? Does that happen anymore? I don't know. And I don't know that it does. You hardly hear of and sons anymore.
Succession planning.
Yes.
It's a huge business.
Yeah, I saw some of you with the cameras, and I should have said you don't need to. I will be later today. I'll be posting this deck up on our website. So if you want to copy down graflink.com, MCC.
Also, I'll share it with everybody after we're done.
Great. And while you're up there, feel free to look at a little bit of what we do over at Graflink. We're here in Midtown Manhattan. We have photo and video shooting space, all of our marketing and advertising, all right here in the East 50s, East 60s, East Midtown. And we also have something we call Blitz Marketing, which is a transition of everything we have done for big brand name companies and trying to bring it down to a place where SMBs can use it and afford it. And the essence of it is putting out a new marketing campaign every single month, one a month for the entire year, at a very low price and making it very affordable, which is something that nobody else is doing at this point that I've seen. And it's something that once a month marketing, branding, getting things out there to a customer base, to expand the customer base, to retain an existing customer base is really important. Because if you don't do it and everybody else is, you get lost. Any questions?
Thank you.
Real quick, again, thank you, Lance. Thank you all for coming.